the DNC releasing a long-delayed 2024 autopsy report suggesting the White House and top Democrats failed Kamala Harris. Quote, the national campaign did not effectively drive Trump's negatives, and the White House did not effectively support Vice President Harris over 3.5 years to improve her standing before the candidate switch. Now, we didn't really need an autopsy for that. According to Harris's book, when asking for support, Gavin Newsom responded with, hiking, we'll call back. Former President Obama advised, think through the timing. And J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, flat out said, I can't commit. Now, the report also zeroes in on her time as border czar and how the Biden White House threw her into the flames without an extinguisher. Quote, President Biden assigned the vice president a brief including immigration, which was poorly framed by Republicans as border czar. It was not the official title, but it was the one that the media propagated, and the White House failed to contradict or correct. But title or not, Harris didn't do anything about the border and only visited the thing twice while she was VP. The report did acknowledge, though, she may have saved Democrats from an even bigger down-ballot wipeout had Biden remained on the ballot. But when it came time for Harris to actually sell her accomplishments to voters, her failed strategy boiled down to one message. Trump is bad. Quote, anti-Trump sentiment alone was insufficient to motivate voters. The Harris campaign appears to have relied on Trump being unacceptable rather than building an affirmative case for Harris. It's important to note that all of these conclusions come with the mandatory citation of no evidence to support the claim. Joining me now is former press secretary to Jill Biden and Democrat strategist Michael Larosa and radio host here in Dallas, Mark Davis. Thank you both for being with us here today. Michael, do you agree with this autopsy that everybody seems to hate on the left?
Well, there's parts of it that are, yeah, sure, it's true, but it's obvious. It's nothing new. It's not the kind of meticulous autopsy I think Democrats were looking for. You know, the chair had one administrative ask of him and promise, frankly, that he made to Democrats. And that was going to be a big part of restoring trust in our leadership in the Democratic Party amongst Democratic voters. And he failed at that.
Okay, let's do it this way. Mark, I'm going to ask you quickly, could you write a Democrat autopsy for me for 2024?
I could, and to the document's credit, it contains some of the things that they said. Move toward the center, do better in rural areas, note what your weaknesses might be in terms of finding real solutions. Those parts were good. But there is a certain come to Jesus moment that you've got to have that says, look, the dogs didn't like the food. The customers didn't like the restaurant. This was a summary rejection of the Biden agenda and an obvious recognition that Kamala Harris was a simply horrible candidate. And the last thing I'd put in is, and this is loving advice for everybody who's my Democrat brother and sister, have primaries. Let actual voters make the pick, because this was for a party that lectures us about democracy, this is an unbelievable abrogation of democracy to simply hand it to her undeservingly.
Okay, Michael, I think those are all fair.
Yeah.
Let's add to
yes,
it. Can
we
add to it?
They are.
Walk away from
yes.
insane transgender policies. Don't embrace democratic socialism. Take Mark up on his opportunity or his offer to move to the center. And yeah, it's small, but also big. Just pick a better candidate, which I will give you, Michael, is not easy. You don't have a lot of options when you reach into the barrel. But right now, it looks like you're going to pick the same one for 2028, Kamala Harris.
No, I don't think we will. And I think that, look, consultants are only good, and I hope Kamala Harris learns this from President Biden. Consultants are only good if they tell you the truth. That's their only value. And the truth is, she got 8% less Democrats turning out for her than Joe Biden did 4 years earlier than her. 6 million Democrats didn't show up for her. 2 million came from her own home state. There's no appetite for another Kamala Harris candidacy. That's not going to happen. But Mark is right. There were structural problems that they didn't assess in there, which was not having an open primary, which was the decision that went into Biden's choice to run again. Then you have the tactical issues, right? You had Kamala Harris and her own words on trans, right? There was nothing you could do about that. Then you had cultural issues within the Democratic Party. And what I mean by that is a culture of candidates like Biden, like Harris, consumed by fear, consumed by paranoia, consumed with caution and risk aversion. They think podcasts are some magic sauce. It's not podcasts. It's accessibility that allows you to be authentic. Democrats are obsessed with authenticity, but what they don't understand is that Donald Trump will go everywhere. She didn't do an interview for 5 weeks into getting the nomination.
Yeah. Right. I think that's all. Okay, that's all fair. I think both of your analysis is very fair. I would just continue to hammer the idea that you have to understand the failure of the policies and the ideas as well, not just the personality and the tactics. So, Mark, I'm going to take your diagnosis, Mark, right? Give me the candidate that could actually check the boxes of a real autopsy. If not Kamala Harris, who is the Democrat?
Well, it's not going to be a Wes Moore or Andy Bashir, who are the darlings and the supposed centrists, because they're just not. Andy Bashir is an abortion cheerleader, and Wes Moore just spent some time talking about how he would usher his son through trans surgery. If the Democrat Party will pay attention to this document and my loving additions to it, you'll get a Harold Ford Jr., you'll get a Stephen A. Smith, you get a Bill Maher-style classical liberal, and I just don't think that's going to happen. These are people who are center-left, who are more liberal than I am, JFK-style Democrats. I don't know if the party will approve of those anymore. Fetterman is reviled in his state of Pennsylvania for daring to differ one plank from the platform of squad-friendly lunacy. So I think as much fun as this day is, I think this autopsy document is a one-day story, because there is no evidence that the modern party in 2026 is going to pay a lick of attention to it. They're going to remain as extreme, as squad-friendly, as extreme as they appear to want to be every single day.
Real quick, Michael, one name.
Me?
One name.
Rahm Emanuel.
Okay.
Not a bad name. Not a bad name.
We'll see if he can win a primary.
We're going to be doing to John Fetterman, unfortunately, what you guys just did to Thomas Massie. There's no room for dissent in these parties.
We had a reason. We had a reason. Massie was disloyal to the cause. Massie was not on board. Bad example.
You liken Fetterman. You liken Fetterman to Massie. Fetterman votes 93% with Democrats. 93% with Democrats.
I'm not a Massie fan.
No, I'm a Fetterman fan. But what I'm saying is my party's going to do to Fetterman what your party just did to Tom Massie.
And that'll be a real shame for you.
Yeah, it'll be a loss for them.
93% votes with the party, and that 7% is going to be what gets him, not literally, figuratively killed as a Democrat. All right, Michael Larosa, Mark Davis, we got to leave it right there. Thank you both so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.